Finally, we have a new laptop to review on Tech Today.
Wrong laptop. Cut.
No cut. Rolling, because well, that was part of the plan. Now you don't need to cut here on Tech Today. The show begins with this particular laptop, the Dell XPS 16. Is it really hiding in the shadow of the MacBook Pro? Because this is fully loaded, the MacBook Pro. And guess what? The Dell XPS 16 is actually more expensive than this souped up MacBook. Now, what is this new laptop all about? Of course, I did my first hands-on at the Dell event a few weeks ago, and I was very excited to actually get my hands on this review unit. But what's it all about? Is it truly the Windows challenger to the MacBook Pro? Well, that's what we're going to find out on this segment of Tech Today. Now, the Dell XPS series has always been Dell's flagship series, perhaps the best that Windows has to offer. But this time, there's a lot of changes in terms of design, and some of them work, some of them don't. But first, let's address the elephant in the room, which is price. This is 3,60,000 rupees for this particular unit. Intel Core Ultra 9, 32 gigs of RAM, and NVIDIA RTX 4060 GPU, which means that you can game on this particular laptop. But honestly, it's playing in the big leagues with the MacBook Pros. The MacBook Pro, for perspective, 16-inch, the biggest MacBook you will ever get, which is right here, with an M3 Pro or an M3 Max. That's essentially two configurations of the MacBook Pro with Apple's silicon. And the best that Apple has to offer would cost you, well, roughly 2,50,000 rupees. That's 1 lakh cheaper for the M3 Pro. And if you want the M3 Max, it starts at 3,50,000. You can obviously configure it further, but that's how much a MacBook Pro, a really heavy one with 16 inches costs. So can this actually live up to the hype? Let's talk a little bit about the design of this particular device. Well, to be honest, if you look at this device, it is minimal. It is futuristic, very, very slick. There's no physical buttons here, which I found fascinating when I saw it the first time when it was unveiled. And it's got these touchpad-like capacitive screen over here where all these buttons, well, they are quite responsive with haptic feedback. And it's the same when it comes to the trackpad. It looks very minimalistic, but there is no trackpad. It's somewhere over here that the trackpad seems to work. You go over here and obviously it stops working. So this is the invisible trackpad here. There's a co-pilot button. The minute you press it, there comes all of the Microsoft system with their LLMs and ChatGPT powered and whatnot, because this is your everyday AI companion. But the knockout punch here, is it Copilot, especially what's going to be coming with Apple Intelligence in a few months to these MacBooks? Well, it's all right, I understand that, but they have ChatGPT coming to the Apple ecosystem. So how does this really feature? I think it's going to be an apples and oranges comparison or an apples and apples comparison. Honestly, it's an interesting feature, but it needs some work. It's not the fastest, it's not the most intuitive. One good thing about the Dell laptop, similar to a MacBook, is that you can open it with one hand. So no matter how heavy it is still very, very sleek. Of course, it's got Gorilla Glass 3 and this CNC machined aluminium. It does look very premium. In fact, if you're sitting in a cafe with the MacBook, these are two very clunky laptops, the 16-inch and the XPS 16. This one honestly does look very premium. But what's the typing experience like? Look, on an ordinary laptop, if you're typing, you have a little bit of spacing between the keys. There's this nice click mechanism with the sound as well. That's what the MacBook is known for, a very comfortable typing experience on the go. In fact, even the Magic Keyboard on an iPad does that job. Over here, there's no spacing whatsoever. It's massive, but then it's strange because the speakers on the side, which are quite loud and do a fairly decent job, but then the keys, the most important part, are all cramped together. So if you're used to any other device, it's going to take a lot of time to tweak and adapt your workflows to this, because I often end up pressing the wrong buttons. Also, it's so slick and so sharp on the edges, sometimes it can actually be painful if you're resting your hand on the edge like this, right? So this is not a very comfortable experience. But if you're spending so much money on a laptop, almost as much as a small car, then you expect it to be comfortable. And it shouldn't be the case that you're getting these cuts and bruises whilst using such an expensive laptop, especially on the go, because I want to be editing on this device. And this is a little bit of a problem area, and I thought I must point it out. One thing where this scores over all other laptops, and especially over the MacBook, is the screen, right? The fact that you have a touchscreen display, 4K OLED, I think this is something that Apple needs to do, and a lot of the others need to do. If you're spending so much, you want that functionality of being able to open stuff by clicking on it as well, and the screen is brilliant. It's very vivid, it's a 4K OLED, that means better battery life as well, and incredibly crisp and well-saturated colors. Now do note that the base model only has an LCD model. This of course comes with the OLED. Higher resolution, sharper colors and deeper blacks. But in terms of brightness levels, it's almost as good as a MacBook. It's a 120Hz refresh rate, and I just can't get over the fact that we have a touchscreen here. This is why I don't use a MacBook and I use an iPad with the Magic Keyboard, because it gives you the functionality of touch and it gives you the power of silicon or their own chipsets. Now, when I'm talking about something being sharp, there is an advantage, especially if you're using only the screen right here. It only bends this much. I wish it went fully flat. And then you have a lot of real estate to work with. Sharp edges, but that also means a more immersive display. And it's a 16.3-inch screen, incredibly slim bezels, edge to edge, and the touchscreen panel is just amazing. The responsiveness is great. The output is amazing. Like I said, you could use this entirely as a touchscreen tablet, a very good display to watch content as well. I wish it was removable. This could have been a game changer, but I understand how they're operating with this sort of a form factor. It's only that the keyboard doesn't do justice to that brilliant screen. So what about ports? Because that seems to be a question that everyone has on a laptop. So if we look right over here, it has 3 USB Type-C ports, a micro SD card reader, and a headphone jack. Honestly, there should have been more ports. Even the MacBook Pro has an HDMI input. Dell includes a USB-C adapter that has a USB-A and an HDMI port in the box. It's good to see that adapter comes in the box, at least in ours, because if it does, it's an expensive, useful accessory that comes with this expensive laptop for performance enthusiasts. Anything like that with Apple or other companies you got to pay for, it comes with the box, and that is refreshing to see. It seems like form over functionality for Dell, which I don't know if that's the right thing to do, especially if you are targeting professionals. But for now, I can tell you that battery life isn't a problem on the Dell XPS series. You get more than 10 hours on this laptop, which is almost comparable to most MacBooks, much better than most Windows laptops. So battery life isn't an issue, but that's because of what's under the hood, and that's what I'm going to tell you just before I give you the verdict. So in terms of specs, the processor is key. It's an Intel Core Ultra 9. A fair bit of RAM in this one, which you can obviously scale up on all your laptops, 32 GB of RAM, a really advanced GPU by NVIDIA RTX 4060. All of this means great performance in a laptop that can complete most demanding tasks without any problems. Now, everyone's been talking about the NVIDIA stock going up and honestly taking on Microsoft and Apple. This particular system is an NVIDIA Studio validated system. What does that mean? It is purpose-built for creators, tested and validated to deliver fast and fluid performance across most of the challenging creator workflows that, well, ordinary creators like me go through. So this is certified by NVIDIA as well, and I think that is very interesting because you see NVIDIA and all the other players in the back trying to take on what Apple is doing with silicon. You see a lot of the other tech companies now looking inwards, building their own chipsets, not relying on third-party chaps. Well, over here you have NVIDIA and Dell and Microsoft all coming together with this machine, which is a performance powerhouse, comes with its fair set of problems and teething issues, but it's expensive. So is it really worth it? Now, we addressed the pricing issue right at the start of this review. It's a very expensive laptop. Power-packed, there are a few things that could have been better, but honestly, with what Microsoft's doing with Copilot, that integration on a Dell laptop, good hardware, fantastic touchscreen, decent battery performance, and of course, we have Windows and the NVIDIA GPU. It's a great package. Fantastic for professionals and creators, but it's very expensive. If this is the best that Windows has to offer, then great. It perhaps is the best Windows machine that we've seen for professionals. The only problem is that the MacBook Pro still exists. So if the Dell XPS 16 is the best that Windows has to offer, then they have a long way to go before they can beat the ultimate laptop king.